Welcome to the internet, valued spectator. This is Leo Film. I am Leo. I was recently asked to share a technique for painting, modeling, converting, anything that I enjoy using or seeing other people use. The technique called slap chop seems to be all the rage these days. However, the undercoat with the grey gradient, or gradient, is not the be-all end-all. If you're about to start a project with many minis featuring bits with roughly the same color, it can be advantageous to utilize a color-tinted gradient instead. For instance, totally random example, if you're going to paint, say, 200 rat people, you might save some time by turning regular slap chop into flesh chop, or if that's too gnarly for you, rat chop. Yeah, let's go with that. So I'm going to demonstrate the process on a single mini. While the process may seem slow for a so-called speed painting technique, keep in mind that the setup time barely scales if you complete a single step on all of your minis. Also, with repetition comes routine. With routine comes confidence. With confidence comes speed. With speed comes paint. With paint comes gaming. With gaming comes fun. There you have it. Rat chop is fun. Q-E-D. Naturally, you ought to start by priming your minis. I used grey rattle can primer because it's what I had laying around. I started the actual painting process with a base coat of Bogman's Glow. Red Skin Flesh may have been more appropriate thematically, but Bogman's Glow is darker and thus offers more potential for a brightness contrast, and we're going to need that contrast. I do intend to try the more orangey Red Skin Flesh on the next red person I paint, just to see what happens. Also, be aware that this is the first time I use an airbrush for real and have therefore no idea what I'm doing. The same effect is easily achievable with a regular brush, but if you know what you're doing, it is my understanding that the airbrush will be quicker. Next, pick out a large dry brush and dry brush a portion of Cadian flesh tone all over the mini, avoiding the recesses. Remember to dampen the brush first. If you dry brush with a dry brush, brushing paint onto the mini will produce a grainy, dusty or even wrinkly effect, which of course has its place, but here we're going for the smoothness. The next step is a zenithal highlight via airbrush with Kisler Flesh. Remember, I don't know what I'm doing, and you can achieve the same with directional dry brushing, meaning each stroke with a brush has to go top down to achieve the zenithal effect. Next, pick a smaller dry brush and apply a zenithal dry brushing with Flayed 1 Flesh. Pick out all the details you really want to pop later on. Also, make sure that you don't have too much paint on your brush, just like you're not seeing me do here. If you want certain details to pop even more or apply some texture to a surface, just take the Kisler Flesh again and layer it on now. The chop part is done, but it's not yet time for the slap. First, you should block in the eyes, as they are easy to mess up and difficult to fix if you paint them later. You might want to use red paint for lore reasons. I, however, used Chaos Black to make the red person look more like a rat and less like a person. This little pot has served me well for many years, but alas, this was its last rodeo. If you're going to do things with your base, now is the time to do them for the same reason. If you mess up now, you can easily fix your mistakes before you move on. This mini is from the board game Mice and Mystics, and I have elected to paint all the bases for that black, without any fancy shenanigans. When fixing your mistakes, pick whichever of the flesh colors feels right for the specific spot, and be neat about it, or you'll be painting back and forth for a while. One more thing, which should have been done before the fixing of mistakes: before the slap, bring out your metallic base tones. I chose Lead Belcher and Retributor armor and paint all the metallic bits. Now begins the slap. I chose Agrex Earthshade to darken all the leather and metal bits. Next I applied Army Painter Light Tone and Mid Brown on the fur. I used 2 different shades of brown because many reds have a light, often even white, belly. Pro tip: empty a box of toffee and use the insert as an impromptu dry palette for shades and water. I used some of the light tone on the wooden hilt as well. Next I applied some Agrex Earthshade between the snarling teeth and to the lips to provide definition and simulate the darkness of the red's maw, or maybe just some rotting food residue. Because I wasn't quite happy with how the airbrushed gradient turned out on the fleshy bits, I took some Reichland Flesh Shade to darken any shadows and provide more definition to the recesses. If your red people have cloth bits, be aware that this approach doesn't work as well when you use washes to tint them into cool colors like blue or green. You would most likely need a brighter layer paint to adjust the highlights accordingly. In any case, I advise the use of contrast or speed paints for cool colors on a fleshy base coat, since they have better coverage. Then I used some of Army Painter's Matte White thinned with white acrylic ink from Dalerowny to preserve its strength, and placed a tiny dot in each eye to make them look shiny, wet and reflective. I proceeded to attempt to dry brush some Iron Breaker onto the blade, and let me tell you, this paint really doesn't want to be dry brushed. If any of you know a better alternative, I'm open for suggestions in the comments. I then went back to the Retributor armor and used it as a highlight color on itself, since it's bright enough to achieve the brass effect I wanted. The last thing to do is to pick out the teeth. Now you could just hit them with some bony looking paint and call it a day, but since I know a thing or two about teeth and I'm already going through the trouble of making a tutorial, I thought I'd show you how you can up your teeth game. Though they might look like it at first glance, teeth aren't monoliths. Rather, they're composed of a dentine core, that's where you've got all the blood vessels and nerve endings, and an outer shell of enamel. As you can see, the enamel is thinner towards the root and thicker towards the tip. Likewise, the dentine gets thinner towards the tip until there's only enamel left. Naturally, this will cause a color gradient, since the two substances have different colors and levels of translucence. When teeth are very young, they're actually almost white, but not quite, and typically get darker with age, because the dentine will change color and the enamel may get thinner in places due to wear and tear. Depending on certain factors, the dentine can take on different colors as it darkens, but thankfully for us, most mammals will feature teeth of only one color, though not necessarily of the same brightness. So, the first step for us is replicating the dentine color. There are numerous possibilities for dentine colors, so here are paint recipes for 4 common ones. With my red person, I'm shooting for an A3.5 according to the FDI system, so I'm using roughly equal parts of Sandry Dust and Jokero Orange. Now paint all visible teeth with the mixture. For the transition, you could of course use a mixture of the dentine and enamel colors, but for this particular color it's easier to use a Chablis bone as an in-between. Apply it in a thin layer and leave some of the original dentine color showing towards the root. If you can and want, apply it as a gradient, but on most mini teeth you don't have the space for that. It's just something to keep in mind for when you're painting a big monster. Finally, the pure enamel is quite translucent and will appear bluish or sometimes grey when light shines through it. This effect is strongest on the edges of incisors and the tips of canines. I'm using Fenrisian grey thinned with a bit of white ink for that. Finally, it's varnish time. Since most of my minis are gaming pieces and I'm painting them to last, I'm applying 2 layers of matte varnish. Lastly, I'm brushing on a bit of gloss varnish onto the metal bits, the eyes and all of the snarly teeth. This was of course my video for day 6 of WarbossTae's 2023 Summer Painting Challenge. You have just witnessed my very long-winded answer to the first question of the day. However, the other one reads as follows. Shout out a fellow challenger and their project. There can really be only one right now, and that is Dicey Guy with his project Asanal the Dragon Lord riding the mighty Deathfang. He started out strong with his daily update videos, but had to take a break during week 2 to take care of some things, and then some other stuff happened, as it usually does, to keep him from his project. I can certainly sing a song about that sort of situation, and I can tell you, if you've been away from a project for a while, getting back into the saddle is hard. But once you've conquered yourself again and get your hobby space ready to get started again, we'll be here waiting for your videos, my Norse hobby bro. Just don't get snowed in and you'll be fine. Alright, we're done here for now. Click all the buttons if that's your thing, and if you absolutely must leave a comment, don't be a rat person.